From San Francisco, California, this is What's Left, a weekly political discussion challenging the mainstream left. I'm Eduardo Barca with Andy Libson. Today we will discuss the controversial subject of, the controversial figure, Colin Kaepernick, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Last week
we talked about climate change and maybe other stuff, but
yeah,
I kind of thought this is what I've been hearing about in school, and
you work in a high school.
I work in a high school, yeah, and actually for me this is sort of a follow-up to our prison strike episode in many ways, because it speaks to the same issues, and we could have talked about Trump, we could talk about climate change even next week, but I felt like people have been talking a lot about, what's behind this? Is this good for Nike? Is this good for Colin Kaepernick? Is it good for the cause? And I figured I wanted to hear what you had to say, and I wanted to think about. It caused me to think about some of the stuff, and maybe think what I would say about all this. So,
yeah. So last week, was it Monday? I think it was last week, over Labor Day weekend. Colin Kaepernick released a tweet with his picture, and it just said in the tweet, believe in something even if it means sacrificing everything. It was a teaser for an ad that Kaepernick had collaborated with Nike. Then he released the ad itself.
Or Nike released the ad.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes, Nike.
Yeah.
So there was a massive pushback from lots of people.
Burning Nike gear
right.
And stuff like this, yeah.
Because they were feeling as if Nike is choosing a brand. Was choosing a political side.
Pushing some social justice agenda.
Right, yeah. And as we know, or if people are not aware, Colin Kaepernick is mainly known currently because he was part of the NFL Football League, the 49ers, and he decided to kneel when they were doing the anthem at every game.
About 2016 it started, in response to police brutality, all these killings of black youth, black men, black women actually had also been killed. One was in a prison. Wasn't in a prison. She was actually, stopped by the police and then killed, and also about the kind of mass incarceration in general. It was sort of speaking to the fact that I'm not going to stand for a flag that's about, killing my people, and so there was a fear around it back then, and now that the fact that Nike is seemingly on board with the cause, although whatever. That's part of what we'll discuss. Or at the very least, Nike is promoting. I'm not even sure. Nike's promoting Nike, but in the context of seemingly to promote Kaepernick's standing up for something, which is where they come to sacrificing everything, because Kaepernick in 2016, I think. No, by 2017, maybe it was 2016. He basically went into the free agent pool, did not choose to re-sign with San Francisco, and since then has not been re-signed by any other team. Him and Eric Reed, who were both San Francisco 49ers, were some of the first two players to start this the kneeling for the national anthem. That was picked up by many professional players and has been picked up by a lot of athletes and sports athletes at all levels. Like my school, at Mission High School, there were football players who took a knee in response to police brutality and in response to racism. So what he did back then really sparked a wave of people who sympathized with that and sympathized with the way of expressing that opposition. I totally support it. So.
And what better way to do it than in one of the most sacred sports in the U.S. America sports arena and scene, because in Mexico, football is such a big deal for us. We're confusing terms. Football soccer for us and football, U.S. American football
Yeah.
for you all. Football, soccer for us is a very big deal, and for you all, it's football, U.S. American football.
Yep.
And it caused an awareness, and there was a political divide amongst people, division, because people felt as if you should not mix recreational sports or places of entertainment with politics, because it's the one area that is supposed to be neutral,
Right.
which really
So tell me what you think of that.
is not.
So I think some of the things we can talk about here are first some of the basic nonsense points, I would call them, but this notion of they shouldn't be doing this stuff because who are they to bring politics into football? What do you think about that, or into any sport?
Politics into football. I was just saying that politics. All sports are somehow some level of something political in every sport. Whether you can talk about something related as sexism, such as also this past weekend we had with Serena Williams, and she had brought up some things. The differences in how they're treated, and that brings up larger issues about women's issues in general. And I think also just the money that is made around these sports, because it does bring in lots of revenue because it's very popular. So it's a capitalistic venture. It is a capitalistic venture. It is a way to bring in money, and it's past the entertainment. I think that we look back at U.S. American football that was around with Native Americans from boarding schools competing against Ivy League schools. I think those times were really the roots of where racism, even football, has always had some mixture in something political, and racism, sexism has always been brought up. So I don't think that football can be neutral, is what I'm trying to say. Football has always been I looked at the history of football in general here, U.S. American football, and there's always been some controversy with racism, and especially people of color playing because they are the majority in NFL and NBA and sports games. So I think that it's quite naive for anyone to think that you cannot mix political you cannot mix politics inside the sports scene.
All right. Yeah, I mean, the people who are saying, "Oh, these people are don't bring politics into this." Well, the national anthem is political. The national anthem is a political statement of I support the United States and what it does. I think it stands for freedom. That's a political statement. The United States does not stand for freedom. It has never stood for freedom. It has stood for freedom for a small minority of people. So whether you stand up for the national anthem or sit down for the national anthem, it's politics either way. What they don't like is the fact that he's an athlete. Well, he's a black man expressing pop politics in opposition to the mainstream, and that's two double strikes. Which is one, you should bow before the flag essentially and stand before it and be treat it like a church or something like that. And so you shouldn't do that. And secondly, the fact that he's a black male in this country and that he's expressing that opposition is seen as he's definitely going to get taken down a peg for those two things. I support what he did. I think he has every right to do this. I think any athlete has every right to do this. No workers are given really a venue for expressing any of their viewpoints. A lot of these athletes happen to be people of color. They come from communities of poverty and are trying to get out of it through sports. And they are sacrificing everything when they take a stand like this, or they're risking a lot of things when they take a stand. And so I think they have this venue now. Use it to express. In his case, back in the day, and for me up until now, I have some questions about how the course this is taking now. That Nike's got a hold of it.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah. But I totally support what he's done, and I totally support all the athletes who've taken these stands, from Muhammad Ali to James Carlos, who raised his fist during the Olympics, and then he was kicked out. He and another person. It was two people, Kevin Nash, basketball player. There's a Pujols, I think, is a baseball player. There's a lot of athletes who've done things like this.
Before Kaepernick.
Yeah. So, yes, they have every right to do it. I support them doing it, no question. And if anybody says that there shouldn't be politics it's too late. It's already there. And let alone the whole military, support the military every time they fly F-16s over games and stuff like that. What they're saying is, how dare you express politics that I don't agree with? That's what they're really saying.
I may add just a little tidbit here, a little anecdote, because I was a former Jehovah's Witness growing up. Jehovah's Witnesses led the battle against obligation to honor or to put your hand on the right hand side on your left, on your heart, pledging allegiance to the flag in the Supreme Court. And so it's a freedom of expression not to bow or to pledge allegiance or to sing the national anthem in the USA. And thanks to that, they paved the way for that.
Right. The fact is actually not most fans in stadiums stand for it, but you'll always see, I'm one of them, but there's other ones who sit down during the national anthem. Like, that's been going on for years. The fact is that when athletes do it, and they do it publicly and openly, and they do it in response to police violence, then they are going to face criticism, because how dare they express opinions? And then there's the whole question of, who are you to say something? There's that question, right? Who are you? What do you know?
But if you don't do it, doesn't it seem like you're unpatriotic in this country, right?
Yeah, but
I remember my first third grade teacher forced me to put my hand again on my heart.
But I'm saying that the second question is raised is, well, what are you? You're just an athlete. You just know football. You know soccer, or you know whatever. Who are you to say these sorts of things? That's a criticism. And again, it's basically saying that we as regular, normal people can't have political ideas and express those political ideas. That's the opposite of what this YouTube channel is about. That is the opposite about what changing the world is going to be about. Because if you're going to leave it up to the people who are supposed to be doing this, the politicians, the corporate heads and things like that, this stuff's never going to get done. So, the only people who are qualified to take political positions are anybody who's not a politician, anybody who's not a corporate head, anybody who's basically just works for a living. Even if you're making a bunch of money, in this case the athletes, at least they come often from backgrounds that are much more modest and really bad off, and so they know what it's like to live a real life. So they're entirely qualified to speak to these issues, more qualified than most, actually. So certainly most politicians, and I just think, like any other worker, they have the right to express these opinions and express them openly.
So we both agree with Kaepernick's position when he was doing it back in 2016.
Right, and up until I still agree with the position.
You're right, and that is when. But before we get to the Nike issue, I'd like to discuss how then, in retaliation for Trump, demanding that he said, "Get those son of a bitches off the game," and causing that, and then NFL players feeling the pressure to get more regulations on the athletes themselves. Is just it was an attack on their freedom of expression and opposition to what is going on in society.
And players responded to it mostly by actually continuing to do some form of protest. They would hold hands sometimes. They would do different things, and they would continue to kneel. Many of the owners at that time, because they took a different position later. Actually, many of the owners actually criticized Trump. Some owners went with him, but some owners didn't. But then later, when Trump was silent about this, then later the owners tried to pass this thing that said, well, you can't do this. And the NFL Players Association said, no, you can't tell us what to do. We have the right to express ourselves. Since then, the owners have basically kind of been neutral on it. Not neutral about it. They still don't like it, but they're not forcing any hand. Ironically, in the first week of football this week, there's only 2 players who took a knee. 2 players. So, I'll get to that. That to me speaks to what's kind of going on with this movement right now.
Bring up that point when you remember it.
Yeah.
Well,
but it really went back and forth. Like, Trump pushed, players pushed back, owners pushed, players pushed back, But then since then, there's been a receding of this issue. And I actually think we've now gotten to the point, frankly, now where it's branded by Nike, where essentially kneeling, frankly, is no longer owned by the players. It's no longer owned by Colin Kaepernick. Honestly, I think it's owned by Nike now.
So let's discuss it. Let's delve into that now that that's a segue into the Nike thing. Last week, like I said, there was a teaser ad, and then there was a video with Colin Kaepernick. This is actually something that Nike is known for, though.
Yeah.
Because you think about Michael Jordan, 1988, the year that I was born, Michael Jordan signed on with Nike. And there is that history. They kind of taken on athletes as their face for the brand. And Nike, I see it as very, very successful in promoting their advertisements just the way that Coca-Cola has. They're both really good at, sticking it in your face. And you remember the check sign. Right. You remember the Coca-Cola signature, brand logo. And so the best way for them, just like Apple did with also using very key figures, the best way for them is to brand things with a key figure. Right. Especially
and with an image, with a feeling, you're not selling a product, you're selling an image, you're selling a kind of a conception of yourself through whoever endorser you get. Yeah.
And Michael Jordan was that face for the longest time. I know that many people, especially as I'm a millennial, but many people associated Nike with Michael Jordan, and they associated that whole
Tiger Woods too.
Tiger Woods afterwards.
Then LeBron James.
Yes. Yeah. And those people have been the face, but you know that Michael Jordan has always been.
He was the first one.
Especially with Air Jordan.
I want to be like Mike.
Yes, and the whole and even after he went to baseball, they still had him signed on until having. So the point being, though, is that I think that here's one I will mention is that I was looking at some demographics before coming here, and Nike exclusively tries to target young people. That is their target audience, 18 to 40, but mostly 18 to 24-year-olds. That is their target, and I see this constantly when I was working in public schools with even children, middle schoolers and high schoolers, and they then switched even like when they were releasing Air Jordans on the weekdays, they switched it to Saturdays to cater to high schoolers because they were getting backlash because parents were saying that children or teenagers were trying, adolescents were skipping school because they felt as if they were going queuing up for sports shoes. But the point being is that is their target. And for the longest time, I'm part of that generation where they were seen as sweatshop, capitalistic, selfish company. And I think that they've had that image with them for the longest time. Now I think as time is going and they know that young people are being aware of issues and are being conscientious of things, they are then seeing the opportunity for let's take on a new face. This is my opinion. This is what I think. This is maybe what you can see. Like I think they think what can we do now so that we can rebrand ourselves with a new face, a new image, a new figure. What is controversial, but what is also young people. And I think I was just asking you earlier, I'm not sure the demographics of this. I don't want to make a stereotype, and I don't want to say something that maybe is not statistically true, but at least when I was growing up and I went to, as I went to high school here in San Francisco, I saw many, especially kids of color, buying Nike athletic wear, whether they were sweat gear
Sweatbands,
or, bands or athletic
shirts,
shoes, shirts, everything. So it's a very good at marketing. And I think that especially people of color, when they see a face like that, and someone that has been like the underdog in the sports arena, people are gravitated towards that and they want to try to support, which is what people, the stocks went down, but slowly it's been going back up.
They're up again, yeah. I don't know which company, it's one of these that rates your stock, basically is put buy now on Nike. Nike has been actually for the last few years, has been falling as a company that has been on the leading edge of promoting itself. There has been a notion among investors that they are kind of falling behind. But when investors saw what they did here, I think two different companies that rate your stocks both put buy on Nike and felt they did a very good move with this Kaepernick thing. And of course, there is an element of this that's attempting to, that's a cleanup, right? Nike is the king of sweatshops, and of course they do it. Nike is into prison labor. We talked about that last. Nike does prison labor, okay? So it has nothing to do, Nike has nothing to do with fighting racism.
And they're the billion-dollar company.
They're racists abroad, and to make cheap goods so they can bring them here and overcharge people of color and people who don't necessarily have all that much money, but you want to use this as a status to get that status that Nike is trying to sell to them through their imaging and through their branding. So they're screwing people over on both ends, abroad and here. Kaepernick is selling right now I'm with Cap shirts. They're going $175 a piece. They sold out in 4 hours. Wow. Okay, and their stock just went up 31%. No, I'm sorry. Their sales went up 31% in the last few days. Okay, so they know what they're doing.
After Labor Day weekend, it went down, right?
Their stock went down at first because investors were a little nervous. No, and then now they're up above where they were before.
Yes.
Okay, and so people know now. Nike has done themselves a big favor, and in some ways, that's the question: who's really to gain from this? And I think there's 3 areas to look at, which is: does Nike have to gain? Does Kaepernick have to gain? And does the cause have to gain? Because I think there's some people who would say, look, okay, Kaepernick's doing the best he can, but I think the cause has to be separated from Kaepernick, and the cause of fighting racism, the cause of police brutality.
Yes, I agree.
And I think so. I will definitely say Nike has come out. For me, in my mind, the big winner out of this is Nike. Nike has promoted themselves. Capitalism is the big winner here, because what they've basically been able to do is take a cause, say it's ours, turn rebellion into buying products.
Package it in a way that is
right, because that's what they're selling.
Appealing.
It's not really so much about sweatshops and about, hey, we're not into prison labor, although it's a piece of that. When they support people like Kaepernick, they're trying to brush up, paint lipstick on themselves a little bit to make themselves look pretty, even though it's an ugly company. Also, Phil Knight, there's all these sexual harassment things in Nike, problems in Nike that they're under. Phil Knight gives hundreds of thousands of dollars to conservatives. So they are a little bit about putting themselves. So the biggest thing is they're taking the rebellion that Kaepernick has associated himself with, a black rebellion, which I think is something that people kind of feel a sense of. That's why people love rap, like that rebellion they hear in it. And they're taking that and they're claiming ownership on it, and they're going to use it to sell you your product and say you can have a piece of this. You can be part of that rebellion. You can be part of standing up by buying our product, and it's going to work. And it's a disgusting thing that capitalism gets away with over every time, and they're doing it again. And unfortunately, I do believe. So, to the extent that Kaepernick has been able to express opposition to this, he's not going to express opposition. Here's my question: when somebody asks him, "Well, what do you think about sweatshops? What do you think about prison the prison slave labor with Nike?" Is Kaepernick going to be able to come out against that now that he's been signed since 2011 with Nike, but now that he's the face of it, is he going to come out and say something? I don't think so. I don't think so. So Kaepernick wins for himself. I get that, and I think he will be able to do some good things of himself. But the cause that he's standing for, I think, has taken a big hit with this, and that's unfortunate.
Now been owned.
It's owned. It's Nike's. It's got a swoosh on it now. And so if you kneel, it's not Kaepernick's anymore. You're doing a swoosh.
I see this happening with companies. They're trying to embrace things. Like I saw some ads for Occupy movement. Yeah. It was ridiculous. And then I saw after that, like Kylie Jenner. I only knew of her because of this Pepsi commercial for
people
the cops.
But she got nailed for that, though.
What I'm trying to say is that companies are seeing that the times are changing.
Yeah.
And what is a capitalist company going to think? This is a venture I can hop onto.
Yeah.
This is something I can take and bet my stock on.
Yeah.
And I can monopolize this to package it in a way that fits for me, and own these my dogs.
Right.
Collar them up and have.
Yeah.
You see something wild, you see some animal or something, and you want to be like, I want to keep that. I'll cage it up for myself and have it in.
And
so that is what I think. I just do not. We had spoken over the phone, and I said to you that I personally think that it's just one way, and like I keep repeating, like it's just one way for them to be able to do what they want with Colin Kaepernick, and now his voice is no longer as strong and powerful.
No, he can't. And I want to be
limited.
I want to be clear here. Like I've been thinking about, I've been thinking about like my criticizing Colin Kaepernick. Actually, not. I mean, like, well, I mean, I'm going to try not to, at least, or I'll put it this way. Like, I think what he's done in the last few years has been very brave. And I do believe that he has stood for some amazing things, not just in 2016, but in his fight to get a voice for players and to say that they have the right to express their views, and to go out. You know, he gave the speech at Amnesty International when he won an award.
That's right,
that spoke about a whole host of issues, as well as problems in the criminal justice system, racism, mass incarceration, poverty, lauding universal health care in Cuba, and taking a hit for supporting Castro for doing that, So he has actually stood for some really good things and actually taken a stand. And that's why I think it's a shame that ultimately he took this step, because I think some people are going to say, maybe he even will say, Nike's using me, but I'm going to use them. I'm going to use them. It ain't going to. That is not the way this works. Nike is going to get the whole thing. They're not going to even share a piece of the pie. The only thing Kaepernick will get is he'll get money. It's going to get a 7-figure deal, and he's going to get some element to promote some political causes here on the side, but his agenda, as spoken in 2016 till now, has now been taken and is subsumed under a brand called Nike, and they're the ones who are going to set the pace of this thing now. So that part is over, and this is something I've started to learn. I feel like I've learned in politics, which is the more you start to stand for something, the stakes get higher for you. It's like I see this with our union. The more you actually try to do something and stand up for something, the stakes get higher. That means that you have to keep it up. You have to be that much better, And it's a pressure. I wonder what would happen for me, because I haven't faced that, to be honest, But I do believe that the higher you rise in politics, not like Obama, but I mean like actually doing something, being like a Eugene Debs, being like a Cesar Chavez,
Andy.
The more you stand for those things that people believe in, the greater the cost that if you fall in any, because people expect and need and want that leadership from you. That's what was so amazing about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, is they didn't crack under the pressure. They were killed, but you didn't see them decline, through that. And this is going to, I think for people, I think many people in some ways are also saying, oh, good for Kaepernick and things like this. But I honestly believe the cause that he is speaking to, that I do believe he believes in, has been really hurt by this, because it's now been put under the brand of Nike, and they will get to set the terms of how this movement, as it relates to athletes, pushes itself forward. I also think Nike gains by a lot of athletes who, Serena Williams, LeBron James, all of them, Tiger Woods, all have spoken glowingly about Nike's bravery here. So they've taken a whole set of African American athletes who are respected in all sorts of different areas, and now they've claimed them, and laid claim to their hearts and minds and said, you're now part of essentially our very, very expensive sweatshop. We're going to pay you good money, but we're going to use you so we can promote ourselves and promote what we're doing, and it's going to work. And you cannot make a deal with the devil. The devil will always win in this case. You have to defeat the devil. You can't make a deal with him. And it's true. It's true in strikes. It's true in working class struggle. Anytime that you try to make a deal with that capitalist, they're going to get something from you. So I feel like there's a lesson here. It's an unfortunate one. I think a lot of people think that it's a halfway. I think it's not. But I'm not going to say, oh, how dare Kaepernick. McDonald's, all right? I'm drinking.
We're not promoting it.
I'm not promoting. Look, I'm drinking this,
we're
okay?
not getting paid
Sweatshop, okay? I drink Starbucks, okay? I have no right to say anything about like whatever. But I don't think you can go as far as promoting, like, I'm not in that position, but I would hope I would not do this with my cause. I would hope I would say, no, I got to keep the cause, fight for that cause, and clean. It matters because you want to build on that cause. You don't want to give it over to forces who don't want to use it right. So I've spoken too far. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I thought this was going to be a shorter video. What I have to say is, I will say that even though I do not agree with Colin Kaepernick and Nike's collaboration, I still do not also agree with a mayor in the USA banning Nike products.
Whatever. Yeah, exactly.
That was stupid as well.
And Nike's going to gain from that. I mean, they're going to win on both ends.
I saw some tidbit on that, and I thought, that was stupid. So I have nothing else to add.
Well,
do you have anything else to say?
Is there anything else to say on this?
I don't. I've said my piece. I told you it's short. It's an opinion piece.
So you just agree with kind of...
Does it have history? The only history I have is, I think, is very interesting if our audience looks into the brief history of U.S. American football. It's very interesting, and how it was part of the birth of this game began with Native Americans and boarding schools.
Okay.
And that's all I just want to add to. I think to think that football is not like
right.
And I will add the link to that.
But so
I don't have anything specific to Colin Kaepernick and Nike.
And the way I put it was, you're just like, okay, I guess that's fine.
I agree with everything you're saying.
All right.
I mean, I think I'm going to regurgitate a little bit that I just think that it is. It's very misleading, especially for when big celebrities that have been outspoken, like Alicia Keys, or other NFL players, or even the singer Ricky Martin, Latino, who posted something about imagine a country where an uproar over an NFL player behind this message over shootings. I think that celebrities that are for these social justice issues, they are just how do you call it? Like, doesn't
blinded? Or?
Yeah, like it doesn't allow. It doesn't. Like, liberals are just going to just see these messages, but they forget underlying all of this is. They see it as a positive message, but they underline all this is ownership. Yeah. You have to understand. Everyone has to understand. Capitalists do not care about causes.
The one cause is profits. That's the only cause they care about.
There's no cause outside of profit that they care about. Cause. The only reason why they are
nationalism in the service of profits, racism in the service of profits. We care. But everything is to that.
But other than that, there is nothing behind Colin Kaepernick. This message is not to promote or to put forth the agenda of the cause of social injustice towards people of color, mass incarcerations, and police brutality.
Or
it has nothing to do with that.
Or even individual expression, ultimately.
Right, thank you. It has everything to do with profits. It has everything to do with trying to make more money, and we need a new face. The new generation loves Colin Kaepernick. Yeah. He is an underdog, and people love underdogs. People love rebellion.
And he earned that. Yeah. He did earn that trust, and unfortunately, it just got cashed in. Mm-hmm. And people will hear that as me saying, oh, he sold out. It just got cashed in. And I don't even think he's thinking that it cashed in. It just happened. And that's what the capitalists do with everyone. It's like the president of my union, well, that's a different question. But every time we try to change something, So it looks like this episode's a little shorter.
Yeah.
All right. You guys got off free. It's like only 30 minutes or something like that. So, you're welcome.
If that's so, then I want to add a little thing.
We'll see in a sec. Okay, what do you want to add?
We need to discuss climate change.
Oh, yeah. I think we might be ready for that. I mean,
in North Carolina, or is it south? It's north. In the east
coast, hurricane is going to be
facing a hurricane. This is what I wanted to add. This is why it's important that we discuss climate change eventually in our topic.
Yes,
which
I
you
agree.
want to
I
change
agree
every
with you.
single time.
All right. But do we want to
This
go on
week-
record next week's
This
climate change?
week is a summit for California Governor Jerry Brown to have a summit because he is the only leader, well, I think two, there are two. He is the major leader leading the cause against climate change in the USA since Donald Trump pulled out of the climate accord agreement in Paris. Now, there's all kinds of issues that we can discuss. I'm not
If you're
saying
going to bring
that
up
I'm
the Paris
for it.
Accord
We've
again,
We've
it's
also,
like
if
this
you want to
fake
look,
news way of dealing with the climate. But
if you want to look at Alexandria Cortez video, we talked about it a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that is the solution. I'm just only saying
attack
that
on the
this
environment.
Republican, and there's issues. Just listen, Andy.
Okay.
The Republicans have been dismantling most policies, most climate change policies against climate change, right? I hope that makes sense.
we're going to talk about this next week.
Andy, you
Okay.
can edit afterwards.
All right. All right.
And so I have to think out loud. I told you this. So
I feel like you're trying to have this episode when we're just going to bring it up.
I'm not having the episode.
right.
So this week, the California Governor Jerry Brown has had a summit, and I went to the protest over the weekend
Yeah.
on Saturday. So I have some footage, and I would like to share it, as well as I met some key
Okay.
leaders, and I would like for us to discuss climate change in the following episode. And my heart and my thoughts go out to all the people on the East Coast right now that
Yeah.
are going to face the hurricane.
Yeah. Well, I think it would be a good issue to discuss.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's it for this week.
Yes, this is it.
If you like this episode,
And you would like for Andy to stop monopolizing.
right, this week I
Stop
did.
in me.
I was trying to control my friend, my whatever. Yeah.
Say something.
No,
Help me.
I'm not.
Hashtag save me. Save Melania Trump. Save Eduardo Abarca.
Oh shit! I'm getting all red.
No.
Anyway, if you like this episode,
Share with all.
yes.
And make sure to
subscribe if you're on
subscribe
YouTube or
and-
iTunes.
Yes, so we have the leading two platforms, YouTube, but iTunes.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are finding
Yes.
iTunes a lot easier.
Yeah.
Because this is way too.
And write reviews if you like it. Write comments if you want to do that. You can actually comment on the iTunes as well by going to the blog post. And you can contact us if you're interested in maybe doing the. Remember, we're going to do an interview, I think, in 2 weeks after the climate change. I talked to Bruce about another socialist, Bruce Newberger, who's interested in doing an interview around what he considers socialism. So I'd like to. He's somebody who I really respect. So I would like to interview him. But that'll come up later after climate change. And you can contact us through Webnet.
All right, that's it.
That's it. Keep it short and sweet. We'll see you next week.
All
Bye-bye.
Ciao.